Today in MiRollo.es, I am with Josh Edwards, Blanco White. Hello, Josh. How are you? First of all,
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
how did you learn to play flamenco guitar and charango?
I've been playing nylon string guitar for many years since I was a kid, and had always really loved kind of that Spanish guitar tradition, but I was much more aware of the kind of more classical side of it, and I'd never heard flamenco before. So it was when I first kind of went down to Cádiz that was the first time I was really confronted by the flamenco tradition, which was a really special moment. And I'd chosen to go down to Andalusia for that reason, to try and get in touch with that heartland of the Spanish guitar. And yeah, it completely blew me away. So that was my experience in Spain. And then with the charango, I was introduced to Andean music much younger. I was probably about 11, and I think ever since that time, I'd always had a dream of kind of learning the charango and learning that kind of music as well. So they were both really kind of interests that began in childhood.
And what challenges did you face?
Learning, well, gosh, they're both the traditions that are, quite different to most of the music that I was growing up with. For an outsider, the biggest difference is probably the rhythm. In both cases, I guess with Andean music, and lots of Latin American music, there's a real syncopation and swing that is very unusual, in compared to the music that I was growing up with. So kind of getting used to that lilt that's often a bit slower actually was really fun and interesting. And then I guess with flamenco is even more kind of complex rhythmically and often much faster. And I guess it's more about the time signatures and the juego and the rhythm that is so interesting. And stuff like bulerías is very hard to wrap your head around for the first time, and really energizing and engaging music because of that. It's fascinating.
And by the way, where are you at the moment? Because I see many different instruments in your studio, maybe.
Yeah, it's a bit chaotic at the moment. I've got some synths here, and like my charangos are here, and so it's like a mixture of different toys and stuff. Yeah, the studio's been where I've made most of my music in the last kind of couple of years, and it's been a big difference from how I was making music before. It's kind of been much more contained, and I feel very comfortable in here, and it feels very private. So it's been great.
And what is the main theme or message of your album On the Other Side from 2020?
It's tricky. I don't think there's a single kind of a singular message or theme. I think it's a group of songs that actually came together over a longer period of time, I think, than this most recent album, Tarifa. And it was a bit more sporadic. I mean, some of them are love songs, and then others are songs that are, I think, more reflective on life more generally, and are meant to be a bit more universal as opposed to sort of really personal. So yeah, I think what's weird about that album for me is I remember listening to it for the first time and thinking it was much sadder than I had realized, which was a bit of a shock in a way. It was weird hearing all of the songs together like that for the first time. And so I think this new album, I think, will feel, I hope, a little bit more open and hopeful.
And what motivated you to study flamenco in Cádiz and Andean music in Bolivia?
I think we touched on it a little bit, isn't it? It's sort of an interest from from early childhood, especially. And I think, you know, I'd played sort of classical nylon string guitar since I was a kid, and had always just loved that sound. So I think, yeah, it was at the time I was also studying Spanish and wanted to, you know, it was the moment where I was trying to really crack the language and spend as much time in Spanish speaking countries as I could. So yeah, that was the reason.
And what inspired you to write Silver Beaches, your second single? And what does this song mean to you?
It's one of the first songs written for this album. It was kind of a real gateway song that helped kind of spark lots of new ideas. But I think it's a song with a kind of image at the heart of it that was very important in the writing process, and the visual side of things is often a really helpful guide in that way. I mean, in this case, I was imagining a beach at night, and I guess thinking about what's the time of day in this place, what does the light look like, what are the colors. All of these things have normally helped me kind of really find the identity of a song and bring everything together and bring all the threads together. And this one, I think it was always felt like I was imagining somewhere on a planet far, far away. So it has this sort of cosmic feel to it. And I think the synths were a big part of that. They felt very nocturnal. Yeah, it was a song that had a sort of, in my own mind, a feeling of cosmic adventure and exploration, and also the kind of radical separation from home that would mean as well. You're a long way from earth and from home, and it was playing with those kinds of ideas. I think going through some heartbreak at the time as well, which I feel like that ended up sort of feeding into this narrative of kind of separation and loss. And I think if you are going through a bit of heartbreak like that, it ends up sort of being like impossible not to write about it. It sort of ends up infiltrating all of your writing. And I think, yeah, you just have to let it sometimes.
And how was the recording process of Time Can Prove You Wrong? And how does it differ from your previous album, On the Other Side?
I was mostly recording in here, in my home studio. So that was a very different way of, yeah, a different process, really. I think one that I really enjoyed. I replaced, I sort of, on my first album, on the other side, I ended up slightly recording everything twice, because I sort of demoed really extensively on very cheap equipment, and then sort of recorded the real thing in a proper studio with a brilliant engineer, Danny. But I think that process of slightly doing it twice meant quite a lot of the magic was lost along the way. Sometimes the first time you record something is the moment where you capture what you were looking for, is that moment of discovery, that there's a sort of excitement to it that is sometimes very difficult to replicate. So Time Can Prove You Wrong and this album Tarifa, the philosophy was much more like the recording button is always on, and I'm trying to capture every moment as it arises. And I got some really great equipment to help me do that. That's been a real game changer.
And you released your song Tarifa on July 14th, which is one of the very southern tip of Spain, where you spent 6 weeks in the winter. Explain me about your experience.
Yeah, it was a really, really special trip. I think it was the first time I'd done a trip like that for a few years, since certainly before COVID. And I between 2020 and 2022, I'd had some really bad health problems with a sort of nerve condition that had stopped me playing. So a lot of the writing I'd been doing in the previous 3 years had been very tentative and slow, and this was the first trip in, you know, in the first time really in a few years that I've been feeling really well physically. So I was just so thrilled to be there and really, really happy to be kind of feeling healthy and strong. So I was, you know, swimming in the Atlantic every day, and I was there alone. So it was, I had so much space to reflect and a lot of space to really get lost in the album process and the music. And I think that's always been important for me to get really lost in it and try and access those flow states that sort of where a lot of things come out at once. And so it felt very cathartic, and just to be in that corner of the world is just such a joy. I mean, it's in the winter, the light is absolutely amazing, so it's so bright, and you have, you know, Tarifa is like that crossing point of the Atlantic meets the Mediterranean, Europe meets Africa. It's kind of this old portal to the from the ancient world to the unknown, and you have all the big tankers kind of going through the straits, which you'd think would be sort of that they'd be eyesores and ugly in some way, but they're not. They're kind of really mystical and sort of surreal, the big tankers going past. So yeah, it was just amazing being there, and you know, I'm sure I'll be going back to right there for many years.
On September
29th,
your new album Tarifa will be released on Network. Tell me details of its recordings.
Well, so I think, yeah, like I said, a lot of it was done here in my home studio. I did a lot of collaborating as well with my great friend Pilo Adami, who is an amazing musician, producer, artist from southern Brazil, and he I think we have different skills, and found a really great collaboration between us where we had enough taste that was overlapping, but also different skills. He's a brilliant percussionist and drummer as well as a guitarist, and so we spent a lot of time working on groove together, and I think, yeah, collaboration was a huge part of this album in a way where my first record felt much more solitary. I was working with a fantastic engineer, but on the arrangement side, it felt much more solitary.
and your third single,
Una Noche Más, was out on September 8th with the voices of Charlotte Schnur and Mavika, who gave an emotional depth to the song. How did the collaboration come about? And how was the process of creation of the song? Because as you said, it was a very solitary process.
Mm. Yeah, so that was one. I mean, there were a few songs on this new album that were a bit more solitary, and this was one of them. I think with this one, it was more. It felt like a very personal song, and I think maybe for that reason, I felt oddly protective over it in a way that I didn't with some of the others. And I think it was, you know, an idea that I'd had in the background for some time, but I felt like I really wanted to get all of my ideas onto the page before allowing anyone else in, and that's not been the case with most of the other songs on this album, which have been much more open and collaborative. But I think yeah, it was basically finished musically, and then Charlie and Mavika both came in at the end, and they're both sing a lot on this album, and I think in most of the songs it felt like all of them were kind of 90% there, and then when they added their parts and when we recorded those in, it was like, these are now done. You know, it was a really exciting part of the process, and part of the album was adding their voices to it. They've got such interesting tones, and added, yeah, and I think a huge amount of emotion and beauty to the album. Yeah.
And what do you expect from your next tour of Europe and the United States, which will start on October 6th in New York? And what cities or places are you most excited to visit again?
Yeah, gosh, tour it's so exciting. I mean, we haven't done it internationally since before COVID, on a headline run, so it's really exciting, and we've got amazing team together. Like the musicians I play with are so good, and really lucky to be touring with them. So it's going to be amazing. I mean, we're playing in a couple of new places. We're playing in Mexico City, which I'm really excited about, and I think, yeah, all over the US as well, and in Canada too, and then Europe. So it's going to be great. I think I mean, doing a tour like that definitely sort of restores your faith in people and humanity. I think it's such a wonderful context to meet people through music like that. And yeah, I think my audience is especially wonderful, obviously. Just really lovely, welcoming people who've always been yeah, just so kind with us. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And how do you balance your personal and professional life as a musician?
I don't know. I'm not sure how. um, yeah, I mean, it's definitely music. It can be quite all-consuming, which is, which is a privilege as well as a burden. I mean, it's all-consuming, I think, because I really love doing it, and there's nothing I'd rather be working on, if that makes sense. So but I mean, I think especially in the sort of middle of an album process, weeks can go by where you realize you've not really taken a day off or thought about anything else other than the album. And I think, it's not the healthiest of things. And I think I had a really lovely bit of time off once I finished the record, and traveled to Brazil for the first time. Was there for a month, really kind of exploring and meeting people and moving around and seeing things, and that was really needed and really inspiring as well. I felt yeah, really alive at the end of it all, and I think I'd love to try and carve out a bit more space to do more things like that, because it's important.
What is your creative process when composing a song?
I think it's always changing, and it's definitely something I'm trying to refine as time goes on. I think each song is kind of requires different things sometimes, but I suppose there are a couple of concepts that I try to like abide by when I'm starting something, and I think the first is I've learned to try and be quite quick at the start. So if you find an idea that you really like, that moment's always really exciting, and I think it's the moment to try and throw as many ideas on as you can, and some things may not work, but other things will stick. And it's almost as you're in that period where you're still discovering the song, it's important to really go for it then, and not get sort of too bogged down in detail, because I think once you've heard something several times, you lose that early sort of dynamism and spark and flood of creativity that is so sort of exciting, and that link with your subconscious is sort of weakened a bit, I think, and it becomes more learnt. So yeah, that's definitely something I try and do. And then I guess the second half of stuff is normally finishing, and it's much more of a grind, much less exciting normally. And I think I just, it's a great time to collaborate then as well, and get throw ideas around to someone else, and trust your taste, and just carry on polishing things and shaping things until I can't hear anything wrong anymore. That's kind of what I do.
And who are some of the artists that you admire and collaborate with?
There's so many people I admire and you know, bands and artists I love. I think on the collaboration side, it's been mostly with friends and, you know, on the music scene, especially in London. I think artists like Rosalia, Feist, Zach Condon. It'd be amazing to collaborate with all of these people, but you know, it's sort of, you know, it's likely not going to be happening. But it's been more with my friends in a way that I think they've actually also had the biggest influence on me, more than you know, more than big artists as well, is the sort of that thing of people around you when you go to see your friends play shows and they're doing things that excite you and push boundaries. I think that ends up you know, really rubbing off on you, and it's also what your friends play you. I think the music I've been shown over the years has been so important to the project and my own project, and that is from, you know, hanging out with other musicians. I think so, ambient bands in London, and yeah, I think they've been really influential on me.
What advice would you give to aspiring musicians who want to follow your footsteps?
Yeah, I try. It's a tricky question. I think there's no right way of doing it, is there? But I think maybe something that's been helpful for me has been trying to think really clearly about what the aim of a song is, or what the aim of an album is. I mean, things can come into focus as you go, but there's something about having things very clearly in your mind, where you know what you're trying to do and you have your parameters and boundaries kind of set, and that there's an identity you're working towards. I've found that that's been really helpful, and I think that is, you know, linked with trying to find your own little niche in the great kind of library and history of music that there's, you know, trying to see what you're doing within that context and add your little piece to that story. And I think, yeah, if you do that with kind of authenticity and originality in mind, I think that's really helpful, and that certainly helped me.
You will come to Spain in November, and you will play in Madrid and here in Barcelona. What can you tell us about this?
Yes, I think is it our third time, I think, playing in Madrid and Barcelona. And I think with Ireland, actually, it's my favorite place to play. I think this is a way we've been welcomed in Spain that's felt really, really special. I think the last time we played in Madrid was this beautiful, very intimate venue, Café Berlin, I think it's called, that was just, very scary first going on, just because of how intimate it felt, but then also the way the audience kind of responded to us and held us was really amazing. So, and then we've had some wonderful gigs in Barcelona too. So it's a joy for me to play there. Spain's such a a special country to me, and somewhere I've spent a lot of time, and I think it's just, it's really great to connect with audiences in person in those moments. It's a real treat.
And the last question, will you tell me a dream that you would like to fulfill?
A dream? I think we're hoping to do our first touring in Latin America, in later, I think just after this tour. I think that's a huge dream for me as well. I think it's so expensive to get all around the world and do these tours, but I think it's just something. This has been a huge dream of mine, and another continent I feel a deep connection with and curiosity for. So I think if we can make that happen, it'll make me very happy.
Josh, thank you very much for this interview. I wish you good luck with all your upcoming concerts, and I send you a hug from Dao and the whole team of MiRollo.es.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to meet you, and thank you for the lovely questions. Speak soon.
Yes, see you in Barcelona.
Ciao.
Ciao.